Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Toon Talk. Today I wanted to mix things up and go over my personal list of 10 out of 10 albums from the 1960s. Similar to what Anthony Fantano did, I want to go over some of my personal favorite albums I would consider perfect 10 out of 10 from each decade, starting with the 60s going up into the 2020s. So I figured it would be a fun list to do. It won't be too long. I'm just going to go over all of them pretty brief. And just if anyone out there has not listened to any of these, I highly recommend giving them a chance. So let's go ahead and begin. I'm going to get probably the most obvious one out of the way first. Starting off, we have Abbey Road by the Beatles. For anyone that saw my Beatles tier list, of course this ranked at the top. I called it a 10 out of 10 in that video, and for a good reason. It is, in my opinion, pretty much perfect. There's no complaints from me. It is one of the best produced albums of all time, I would say. It's probably one of the most iconic albums of all time, featuring Come Together and Here Comes the Sun, the Abbey Road medley in the second half. Its sheer iconicity is just one big reason why I really would consider it a 10 out of 10. And it really is the Beatles at their best. So, you take the most influential, most amazing band of all time, and it's their best album of all time, it's bound to be a 10 out of 10. And for me personally it is. I think that all four boys were at their peak here, songwriting wise and just instrumental wise. I think that they basically just knocked it out of the park with this one. The cover, in my personal opinion, is incredible. My girlfriend makes fun of me all the time. She doesn't see it, which that's fine. I know a lot of people, especially today, will not think it's as iconic as people used to, but to me, it's just such a memorable picture, and it's representative of their best work, which is why I love it so much. And track by track, my God, you've got Come Together, which is an excellent opener, one of their most popular songs. You've got Something, which is like one of the best love songs ever made. There's so many high points. You've got, of course, Here Comes the Sun. You've got I Want You, She's So Heavy, which is one of the most disturbing songs the Beatles ever made, and for good reason. I love it. It's also one of their longest. It's probably a top 10 of theirs for me personally. You've got Because, which is great. You've got the whole medley, which starts out with You Never Give Me Your Money, which I love to death. One of my most underrated songs on its own. There, and the rest of the medley is just as excellent. It's a nice little lean package. It's only about 45 minutes, I believe, but it is well worth the length. Every song sounds great. Like I said, the production is stellar, and I think that it is well worth a listen and is well worth having the praise that it gets. But yeah, just getting probably the most obvious one out of the way. Moving on, I wanted to throw in Charles Mingus's The Black Saint and The Sinner Lady on here. This is probably my favorite jazz record of all time. And I'm a big fan of jazz. My father really got me into jazz a couple years back. Before that, I really didn't know much about it, and I would probably say that Charles Mingus is my favorite jazz artist. And this, in my opinion, is his best work. Not really too much to talk about. There's no lyrics or anything like that, but just songwriting-wise, the instrumentals sound amazing. It sounds like everyone is lively, having a great time. The horns sound amazing. All the brass instrumentation is stellar. And it just has some really fun cuts. I especially love the opener, track A, Solo Dancer. That's probably my favorite on the whole thing, even though it's shorter than I think the other three. But, really, just a stellar jazz album, in all honesty. And that's coming from me. I've listened to most of Mingus's work, if not all of it. There might be a couple that I've missed out on, but I've heard pretty much all his stuff. And this is the one I come back to the most. Not too long. I think it's below 40 minutes, or it's right around 40 minutes. Not too long. For anybody that is interested in jazz or just interested in instrumentation without, having lyrics involved or anything at all, I think that this is well worth a listen. And yeah, I'll keep it right there. 10 out of 10 in my opinion. I love it. I know a lot of other people love it, and a lot of other people consider it his best work as well. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Next up, I wanted to talk about Bob Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited, which is probably the essential folk album, I would say. Either this or Bob Dylan's Blonde on Blonde. Basically, in general, Bob Dylan is the essential folk artist. You really you really cannot go wrong with his body of work. And he has made my favorite folk albums of all time, the two I already mentioned. And yeah, this album is excellent. It does feature like one of the most iconic folk songs ever with like a Rolling Stone, but that is not the only high point. Every track on here is excellent. Bob Dylan's singing is excellent. His songwriting is at its peak, in my personal opinion, on this record. It has an amazing pace. No song is too long. No song is too short. And it just, everything flows really nicely, and it sounds amazing. It's well produced. I really, like I said, want to kind of keep it brief here, but it, in my personal opinion, is an essential in folk music and is a 10 out of 10 for sure, I would say. Yeah, that's really all I want to say about that one. Definitely check it out if you have any interest in country/folk music. Next up, I wanted to briefly mention Frank Zappa's Hot Rats. I kind of cut off the title there, my apologies, but this really is probably Frank Zappa's best work. This an apostrophe, I would say. I think that he just was at his best. I know he is one of my personal favorite guitar players, and he has some of the best guitar work on here of all time, especially on tracks like Peaches and Regalia, which I adore. I adore every track on this thing. I visit this thing quite often. The cover's neat. I do think that it is his best work. It's probably his work that has held up best with time. Like I said, this is an apostrophe. And it is another one, kind of like the Black Saint and the Sinner Lady, where you're only going to like it if you really like music. If you feel like your music needs to have lyrics, then you probably won't enjoy this, because only one track here has lyrics. And they're very brief. It's only for a little bit of the song. And that's on Willie the Pimp, of course. But yeah, it's really, if you're into that type of music, but if you like the type of music, this will be a treat for you. Again, I think it's a 10 out of 10. I think it's Zappa's best work. I think it's excellent. And that's really all I want to say about it right now. So, moving on to number 4 is, haha, Pet Sounds, baby! I friggin' love Pet Sounds. Now, personally, I do quite love the Beach Boys. I love quite a big body of their work, and it's no surprise that Pet Sounds to me is their best record, of course. This thing really changed pop music back in the 60s, along with the Beatles as well, with Rubber Soul and Revolver, which this album was inspired by. And it really shows, because there's so many unique sounds on here. The production is just so different. It just really went in a completely different direction from their previous work, in a good way. Because some of the Beach Boys' earlier stuff is kind of generic, you know, just like earlier Beatles work is kind of generic pop stuff. Not this, though. This sounds stellar. Every track on here is amazing. Some of my personal favorites are Wouldn't It Be Nice, and Let's Go Away for a While, the instrumental, as well as Oh Caroline No. You've got I'm Waiting for the Day, which I love to death, and God Only Knows, which is my favorite Beach Boys song of all time. I listen to it all the time. It sometimes makes me tear up if I'm in a mood. It is just a beautiful track, and a beautiful album overall. The only critique I have is the cover, which is pretty damn tacky and pretty lame. But the cover does not reduce the quality of the album at all. It is an incredible listen from front to back. It is the Beach Boys' best work. I think it truly does deserve the reputation that it has, and it is, in my opinion, a 10. Next up, I'm going to throw in one here that I don't think a lot of people would agree with, but it, for me, is The Doors, their very first self-titled album. This is coming from a big Doors fan. I am going to be having a Doors tier list out pretty soon. And yeah, I think that this is their best work. I think that Jim Morrison, especially his songwriting, is at its peak on here, with so many iconic tracks. You've got, you've got Alabama Song, you have, just so many great tracks on here on this thing. I love pretty much the entire runtime on this thing. And you have the closer to the end, which, besides for Purple Rain by Prince, is probably my favorite closer of all time. I just think it's absolutely breathtaking, has some amazing lyrical themes in it, and it really just is stellar from front to back. You've got, some of their most iconic songs like Break On Through to the Other Side, which is a jam. There's some great deep cuts on here like 20th Century Fox, and the whole thing just flows together really nicely. There really is not a low point in my opinion. And you've got, probably one of their best songs, Light My Fire, which is another one of the big hits on here. Just stellar from front to back. This is one that isn't like really a 10 for me for any other reason rather than just me personally, because I know a lot of other people probably wouldn't rate this a 10. But it is for me. I've been listening to this thing for years. It's the album that made me love the Doors. It has my favorite closer of all time. It has a great flow, great track list. I really have no complaints, and it is definitely a 10 for me personally. And I hope that maybe it is for other people too, because this is probably the only one on this list that I don't really see get praised like it should. But yeah, definitely check it out if you're interested. I highly recommend. And finally here, I wanted to just throw in Electric Ladyland by the Jimi Hendrix Experience. I'm going to keep this one really, really brief. Just Jimi Hendrix is an incredible guitar player, and some of his most iconic riffs and hooks are on this thing. It sounds incredible, incredible production, incredible songs from front to back. It is a 10 to me personally, although it's the one I listen to the least out of all these, but that's not saying much because I still listen to this thing weekly. It's excellent. Some of the best guitar work you'll ever hear is on this album, and it is well worth a listen. And then, of course, you've got All Along the Watchtower, which is probably the most iconic song on here, and if you haven't heard that song, you are probably living under a rock. But hey, like I said, I'm just going to keep it nice and brief. Another 10 for me. Hendrix is one of my favorite guitar players, of course, like it is for most people, and this is just where that truly shines the best. And I believe that's it. Yeah, I just wanted to throw in about 7 albums on here. Thank you all for watching if you decide to tune in. Like I said at the beginning, I'm going to be doing this for the 70s up until the 2020s. I'm going to do one for each, or I'm going to do a couple for each decade. Excuse me, I'm going to try not to do more than like 8 per decade. Just so you know, it's not overloaded, one video is longer than the rest. But I figured it'd just be a fun little short video to anyone interested in watching. So yeah, thank you very much. Leave a comment if you have any personal 10 out of 10s that aren't on this list. I would love to hear them. And thank you so much for watching, guys. Thank you.